Greetings, everyone. Good morning. I'm in my pajamas to make a point. To be very honest, I did not sleep much last night, and I woke up with something that I really wanted to talk about because I feel like a lot of spiritual teachers on YouTube and people who are trying to teach about spirituality, they are talking about fake spirituality, better spiritual teachers. There's a lot of discernment happening within the spiritual communities and with people. So I want to be very honest. If I can give my wisdom of what I have acquired over these years and what I have awakened to, then I hope that this helps people. Spirituality is the mere existence of yourself. And so you can actually find the truth of who you are through many different ways. There is not just one path. And although the spiritual path of the elves is one that I talk about, I just want to be very clear and very honest with all of you that I have observed in this world through watching people in real life as well as in movies, which are stories about real life and about the feelings of the directors and the emotions and the thoughts that come through real people for others to watch in front of their eyes. That's what a movie is. What I have observed by watching other people's thoughts and how they process information and how they live their life is that there can be a businessman in a suit who pursues wealth and cars, and he basically is living this type of life, and within that life he still has some sense of spirituality. There are still moments of clarity in which he recognizes his divine self, his true self. And so there are those that take on a path of being more spiritual in nature outwardly, in the idea that they focus on a spiritual type of lifestyle in which they become a mystic, or they become a yogi, or they become a Buddhist, and they enter into these certain paths that give them a spiritual identity, and it becomes part of who they are. But the truth about spirituality is that it's existence itself. You can be doing anything in life and come to the divine truths about who you are. It happens to all types of people, and they don't necessarily have to follow a certain spiritual path or even a spiritual path. That is kind of the secret that I want to give you and tell you about. And I'm doing this because one of my goals, my main goal, is to help people awaken. And I have come into the realization that we do not awaken on the same path, and we do not awaken in the same ways as one another. And so I want to let you know that you can be doing something completely different than others that would be basically considered as being unspiritual. And you, because you are consciousness itself, you are creation itself, you are existence, there are moments in time in which you remember who you really are, beyond the material things that you may strive for, or the things that you are trying to obtain in this world. Anyone can get to that place of spirituality. You do not have to follow a certain path, or you do not even have to be as an identity as a spiritual person. The Elven Spiritual Path on my video will appease to those that already have that type of soul, you know, that blueprint within them. They're very much into the elves, and they're very much always been interested in fairy. And they have been somebody that has been very connected to nature, and they love animals, and they love magic and all of that. My channel appeals to people like that. But I just want to make it very clear that I see spirituality in a very broad perspective, that spirituality is not necessarily a path, but it is life itself. It is life unfolding in your daily events. And each of us have a very unique type of journey in which, to be honest, we can't really judge each other's spiritual journey. We cannot say this is more spiritual than this, because we are not in the same mind as that person having that experience. And that is the amazing thing about this universe, is that we are one. We come from the source, the prime source that created this universe together, but we are also very different, very, very varied, and full of diversity in this world. And that's something to celebrate. And so if we start talking about, well, this is fake spirituality versus real spirituality, then we're trying to categorize people, and we're also trying to say, I have discovered this spiritual path, and this seems to be the right way. And the logic of that is that it's not the truth of nature. Spirituality is you. It's awakening into the truth of who you are. Now, there are techniques and there are things that we help each other and remind each other about to discover the true self, but there is not one path. And we cannot judge saying one person is more spiritual over another. We are all spiritual beings having a material experience for a temporary time, so that we can expand our consciousness, I think, individually as well as together. And if we want to get into the new age and a new world, we are going to have to see spirituality in a different way, in that spirituality is life itself, and that we cannot judge each other for our spiritual natures and how we decide to go about remembering who we are. There are paths that can distract us. There are things, there are vices in this world that tempt us. And if we go down those paths for too long, we can forget the real meaning of why we are here, what we are here to experience. And we can forget about the true power within ourselves as we put our power onto the physical vices in this world. But even in those paths, a drug dealer, a Wall Street marketer, a car salesman, I don't know, you can think of any job, any career, any life path. And a person will wake up, go to that job, go through their day, come home, go to sleep. And these events will unfold through meeting other souls, through going through their lessons and learning the truth of the nature of who they are. This is spirituality. It's not necessarily following a particular path. There's no right or wrong way. It's about being open to experience the truer nature of yourself and not being distracted by the material things in this world, but being able to enjoy them. We came here to enjoy the material experience. to see what we could create as creator beings. That's what I believe. Some people may find more spirituality in shunning and pushing away the material things in this world. That's how they find their true self. Some people may find their true self by going after more material wealth and success. That may be the way that they find their true self. So we can't really compare and contrast spirituality. But what we can do is start to recognize the commonalities that we share and the connections that happen within our minds about one another. And I believe that that is how we enter into this new age. We will have a problem that religion had in the old ages. If we go into the new age with spiritual egos and spiritual identities, and yet start kind of separating and dividing spirituality from one another, it's the same thing that happened with religion. But now it's a less defined and not really organized way, but yet you're still going to divide each other, because through social media and through talking to each other, you can say, my spirituality or my way is the true way. In the honest, logical truth, when you strip away all of that and you get to the heart of things, you realize that no one really has the true spiritual way or path, but that the path is created by you as a unique individual, and what interests you, what you love, what you want to experience, your type of aesthetics, the way that you like to express yourself as a creator being. That becomes your spiritual pathway into discovering the true self. So those of you who have not found a particular spiritual path, you have not been a Buddhist, you've not been into Hinduism as a yogi, you've not meditated, you haven't done any of these things that are tools to help you. I have done videos as tools to help you, but they are not the only way. And I have awakened to the realization that people like my husband who don't follow a particular spiritual path, they don't pray, they don't meditate, they don't do particular things that normal spiritual identities would do, they are still able to have a spiritual experience. They are still having a sense of spirituality, because the spirituality means awakening to the divine self, and they do it through different means. So that's all I really wanted to say. And I hope that this just brings a little bit more unity to one another, less judgment of one another, less saying, I have the spiritual path, this is a better spiritual teacher than another, they're more evolved than this. I mean, we are going to have a real big problem in the new age if we start to do that and live by our spiritual egos. So I have a suggestion. Why don't we just explore spirituality in this new age together without judgment of having one be better over another path, but allowing a sense of spirituality to be a natural unfolding of life itself, and looking at the businessman and looking at the yogi and not doing a compare and contrast in sense of spirituality, but understanding that the businessman who doesn't follow the path of the yogi is experiencing his spiritual divine self in that way through his journey in his life, and the yogi is experiencing himself in this spiritual way through that way in his life. And they are both awakening into their divine purposes, their divine self, and the reason why they are on earth. slowly but surely, and in their own time and in their own fashion. So I hope that we can just be less judgmental of one another. I welcome anyone who wants to explore the elven spiritual path. You do not have to be an elvenkin or an otherkin, or even be someone who even wants to be an elf or resonates with the elves, but you will find that there are things that you can apply to anyone's life through the wisdom of Tolkien. So I'm happy to talk about that on my channel, but it is not the only way. It is not the only path. And I just want to be very clear about that. And I woke up with this kind of message within my mind because of some of the things that I have seen on YouTube lately coming from certain spiritual teachers that are starting to put that kind of differences out there. And it's something that's coming across in the new age, that's becoming a little bit more apparent that people are doing. And I just want to caution people, because my elf sense is tingling, and I can feel that will cause the same division as what happened in religion since the old ages. So we're kind of entering into that new age. We need to come in with a completely different mindset. And what would be a completely different mindset than what the old age had of religion was that my religion is right. This is the way to God. This is the only true path. So we need to make sure that in the new age, we don't have that same kind of idea where it's like, my sense of spirituality is the only way, or this is a more enlightened spiritual teacher than another, or things like that. There are only warnings about certain spiritual teachers, whether a spiritual teacher is only trying to get followers or students in order to be famous and to be well known and things like that. You can start to get red flags, or you could tell the difference between someone really wanting to help others versus someone who's not. So that's the only thing to look out for, but it doesn't mean that they're less spiritual. They're still having their spiritual experiencing themselves, and they're still opening themselves up to that path. So that's all I want to say. Let's be less judgmental of one another and continue on our own individual paths and respect each other's own individual unique pathways.